apartment. We're in a bunker building. We're protected, up to 200 miles an hour. We've got a big picture window, a bulletproof window, and we're watching the roofs peel off of buildings next door to us. And the flooding is catastrophic. Our police units have water coming into the doors of they're stored down there, but we're in bad, dire shape.
And we knew that you guys would be in the thick of this for much of today. Are there any people still left in Grand Isle in terms of riding out the storm there?
We've got about 15 of them staying here with us in a protected area. They have restrooms and drinking facilities. They were stragglers that just showed up, and we're housing as many as we come to. We can't get out right now. It's too dangerous. We're in the eye wall, I believe, because this thing blowing. If things are coming apart all around us.
You're in the eye wall now, probably been there for several more hours. Have you ever seen weather this bad in Grand Isle before?
We can't make it. You got to stop it. We can't have 3 more hours of this.
And when Paul Goodloe did that interview with the Grand Isle Police Chief, Scooter Westrever, this was a little bit ago. They were in the outer eye wall, and we've been trying to make contact with him, again, to get another interview for you, but we are not able to communicate with them at this time. They are now getting a taste of the strongest winds from Ida, that inner eye wall. They are just right on the outside of that inner eye wall. And so we will continue to try to make contact with them. They did get a wind gust before their gauge failed at 148 miles an hour. Now remember, this is before they were getting into the worst of the wind. So we'll keep you updated on the information we have coming out of there. 90% of the people did leave Grand Isle, but as you heard, some did stay. We also have some breaking weather news if you're just joining us, that Ida did make landfall near Port Fourchon around 11:54 Central Time. And believe it or not, the winds, 150 miles an hour. That makes it a Category 4. A Category 5, if you're curious, are winds at 157 or stronger. And this is now the third landfalling hurricane with winds of 150 miles an hour in Louisiana. The other two were the last island hurricane in 1856, and of course Laura in 2020, that was west of here, and Lake Charles, Louisiana. This is the 17th tropical cyclone to hit the continental U.S. since May 2020, and Louisiana's third major landfall. With all this said, everything is now moving north. If you've been watching us, we had blue skies earlier. We're now getting some of that rain. And here's the thing, as this goes right in between basically where I'm located in Morgan City and east of me in New Orleans, which is about 90 miles to the east of here if you did the drive, it looks like this is going to go right in between us, and so we'll get the worst of the weather on either side because we're going through what is called an eye wall replacement cycle. We have an inner eye wall and there's an outer eye wall. And what will happen now is that outer eye wall will take over, which is bad news because that expands the wind field. With that said, the New Orleans EMS has suspended operations. The New Orleans EMS has suspended operations. Things are going to get a lot worse before they get better here. So everyone needs to stay indoors, stay away from the windows. Debris could be flying, and we're going to watch this evolve as we head over the next 24 hours. And I'm talking to you in places like Baton Rouge as well. You are inland, but this is a strong storm, and they do not just dissipate right away. They can hold their strength. You can experience Category 1 winds all the way up into places like Baton Rouge. Now to the east of here in Gulfport, Mississippi, with that southerly flow, we're already seeing the water rise, and Tevin Wooten's been there all morning. Tevin, I know that we've seen it over 5 feet already on the Mississippi coast. Tell the viewers how the morning has progressed for you.
Well, Steph, good morning to you. I'll tell you how the morning has progressed here throughout portions of Gulfport, Mississippi. Along Highway 90, that's where I've seen some of the strongest water pile up in terms of the surge, by the way. At first, we were in that easterly flow. I think we're still in the easterly flow, but what will sort of be the insult to injury in terms of the storm surge, that flow then kicks in out of the south as Ida continues to pull towards the north and west. So the water pileup has continued to happen here, and that will be the story as we go throughout the evening and the overnight hours tonight. So even as this storm continues to pull out, The water right behind me here along Highway 90 continues to pile up. This is actually portions of the Mississippi Sound that does lead you into the Gulf of Mexico. You can see the way that the wind is carrying all this water towards the west here. That's because, again, the winds are out of the east. So a lot of the pileup has been because of easterly flow, but then we'll get into that surge from the south. So overall, right now, at Waveland Yacht Club and the Bay Waveland Yacht Club in Mississippi, just about 5 miles to the west here, we actually have a water rise. I think the latest gauge reporting about 5.2 to 5.4 feet. So that is moderate flood stage. It only takes another 2 feet to get into major flood stage. So for a lot of the folks that live right on the coastline, you need to be extremely careful and watch that water rise ever so closely. And here's the thing, folks, as you can sort of see, we've got 2 lanes here on Highway 90, one headed west and one headed east. But just beyond that, where it looks like there's some dunes, that is actually the beach. The beach has been overtaken by the storm surge. Again, that water level rise of 3 to 5 feet, that's already occurred, but we're forecasting water rises to be between 6 and 9 feet. So still another 2 to 3 feet to go in terms of the surge. You're looking at the sky conditions right now, and it's actually quite dry. That's a marked difference from what we had earlier this morning with some of those squalls that came through right around 8 o'clock this morning to 9 o'clock this morning. It dumped a little bit of rainfall, just enough to aggravate the soils. And keep in mind, this has been a wet side of times here across coastal portions of Mississippi and throughout the northern Gulf Coast. So it's only going to take a little bit more rainfall to cause a lot of high water headaches here throughout southern Mississippi. And guess what? The outer feeder bands extend about 100 miles to our east into Pensacola, Florida, where they too are feeling the brunt of torrential rain from Hurricane Ida. So as we get into the evening hours, the winds do still hold. I think we see wind gusts just like this, right around 25 miles per hour, but some of the stronger gusts will continue to come, and we're forecasting those to be between 40, 50, maybe even 60 miles an hour. Let's get inside right now to meteorologist Carl Parker and storm specialist Carla. I know you are watching this closely, still perhaps dissecting the latest message from the National Hurricane Center. Ida did make landfall. Do we see this storm going through an eyewall replacement cycle and potentially slowing down? And ultimately, if it does slow down, Carl, what does that do to some of the impacts across the Gulf Coast?
Well, yeah, it's definitely going to be slowing down, and that's going to make everything last that much longer, and it's absolutely going through an eyewall replacement cycle, and that's going to bring down the strongest winds, but allow the winds to expand at the same time. 150-mile-per-hour storm right now. This is only the first time in all of recorded history that we have seen 2 back-to-back 150-mile-per-hour landfalls in 2 years in Louisiana. And you can see very clearly where the center of the eye crossed that little spit of land there. That's Port Fourchon right there. That was 11:55 when the storm made landfall. An extreme wind warning now in effect in Jefferson, Lafourche, and Terrebonne parishes until 1:30. That is for winds over 100 miles per hour, now gusting to 85 miles per hour in Grand Isle. We've seen some live pictures out of Grand Isle. They have been just devastating, a tremendous amount of water rise there, and apparently there's at least a couple of dozen people that stayed there in Grand Isle. Here you see the eye wall. That's the most dangerous part of the storm right in there. Then what we call a moat in between and a secondary eye wall, and the secondary eye wall is the one that I believe is going to have a lot of impact in New Orleans later today. The winds already now getting up to 61 miles per hour in New Orleans, and they'll be gusting over hurricane force later today. Here you see the expansive area of strong winds across southeastern Louisiana. Strongest winds, of course, with that core right there. And, of course, that's been piling up the water. That's been coming right across the northern Gulf Coast into Lake Bourne, and a 6.5-foot water level rise in Shell Beach. But, of course, we're being protected in New Orleans by the risk reduction system. So here you see the high-resolution future radar. Again, there's the inner eye wall right there. We're starting to see some degradation of that. Here's the secondary eye wall. That is coming up through New Orleans, especially later this afternoon, and will continue through the evening. At that point, we're going to be looking at winds gusting over hurricane force in New Orleans, and that will continue for several hours, along with very heavy rainfall rates of 1 to 2 and maybe even 3 inches per hour. And then by tomorrow morning, that strongest of wind and heaviest of rain starts to get into southern parts of Mississippi. So here is a model forecast showing you these winds going through this afternoon. So that's 4 o'clock Central Time, 75 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts there in New Orleans, easily enough to cause very serious power outages and also some structural damage, 60 to 75 in Morgan City. We go into this evening, 7 o'clock. We're still gusting to near hurricane force in New Orleans, as well as Baton Rouge and Morgan City. Winds picking up in Hattiesburg. Again, it's a large area of strong winds. It's going to be coming through southeast Louisiana. And then tonight, we are still seeing very strong winds in New Orleans, beginning to back off a little bit. Baton Rouge, 60 to 75 miles per hour. Same story in Hattiesburg as well. So this is going to be a prolonged event with very strong winds because of the slow forward speed of the storm. That's a really important part of this, and that's a big part of why we expect to see widespread power outages in southeast Louisiana, as well as southern Mississippi. And then on top of that, you're talking about a terrific amount of heavy rain, and flash flooding will be likely.